What's up, everybody? Welcome to your latest installment of the Nuclear Barbarians podcast. It is I, your nuclear barbarian, Emmett Penny. And today I have a guest who I'm very excited to talk to, very excited to learn from. This is Dominic Wipplinger from the Austrian Nuclear Society and Nuklearia. Dominic, how is it going, bud?
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, we still don't have nuclear power plants in Austria, so yeah, that's the that's the main problem, but everything else is fine.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you could make the time to talk to me today because I have many questions. So before we get into any sort of my broad what's up in Austria, what's up in Europe right now stuff, tell me about you. How did you get into nuclear? What's your background?
So back in 2004, when I was in middle school, a physics teacher of us put somewhere in the school a scientific magazine. And I took it and I read an article about the project Prometheus, a NASA project, when they wanted to build the JIMO space probe, the Jupiter Ice Moon Explorer, I think was the name. And this was a project for a nuclear-powered space probe. And thanks to the nuclear reactor, it was able to be, or would have been able to be equipped with a high-power ion engine and very powerful radar systems, which would have enabled it to see through the ice shield of the moons of Jupiter. And I learned from this article that nuclear power can make things possible that no other power source would, because it's simply not possible with any other power source to get enough power in the Jupiter orbit, because it's too far away from the sun and you cannot store enough energy with a chemical battery or any other chemical power system. And yeah, basically since then I started to become interested in nuclear energy, nuclear technology. So in the early years, I had problems to find information about nuclear energy in Austria. Yeah, I read Wikipedia articles, but the German Wikipedia articles were not so great about, especially back in the day, about nuclear energy. And I also didn't know anyone else who was really interested in nuclear energy or knew much about it. And when I started to study at the technical university, I was able to learn more and more about it. And then very soon after I started to study, Fukushima happened. And it was a...
set everybody back.
Yeah, at first I couldn't really believe that something is really going wrong in the power plant, because in Austrian media, you always hear that something is going on in some, especially back in the day, in some nuclear power plants, and it's always nothing. And so I was thinking, they're just talking again about the problems, but it will be no major problems at the end. But obviously then this hydrogen explosions happened, and I noticed, something is really going wrong there.
Yeah.
And I started to inform myself about it and what's going on there, and what went wrong, how dangerous it really was. And then I started to see the impact on the policy side. For example, in Germany, the shutdown of the nuclear power plants there. And I wanted to do something against this and to keep the power plants open. And a few months after that, I found a leaflet at the university, and it informed me about the regular meetup of the monthly meetup of the Austrian Nuclear Society. And just went there and got to know the people there. And then I started to learn more about nuclear. And I took nuclear engineering classes at the Technical University and nuclear reactor physics classes, radiation protection classes.
So everything. You went all in. You were like, you're like, I'm doing it for real.
Yeah, I read nuclear engineering books. The Austrian Nuclear Society, we made nuclear tourism. For example, the first trip that we made where I joined was to France, where we visited the Melox plant, and Super Phoenix reactor, which was sadly shut down already at that time. And I also started to work at nuclear power plants. There was a company which basically, if Westinghouse Electric needed more people for the refueling outages in Germany, they hired via this company students for help. And I started to work as a basically measurement technician to do some routine checkups in this plant or help with.
Oh, that's awesome.
That. Yes, and it was really awesome because I finally was able to see the plants from inside.
Yeah.
And learn a lot about them, how they work, how the work is done in these plants, how they are. Yeah, it's really amazing. And then there was this organization called Nuklearia in Germany. I followed it on Facebook back in the day, and at this time it was still a part of the German Pirate Party. And
I always forget about that connection.
Yeah, there were some people at the German Pirate Party who were interested in nuclear energy and found this group where they wanted to talk about it. But they more or less got kicked out of the Pirate Party, and then they opened it as an NGO, basically, an independent organization, and I joined this organization. Yeah, and
so when was that about? When the split from the Pirate Party happens?
I think 2012.
Oh, okay. So this goes back a ways.
Yes. And I was one of the first members, which who were not previously part of the Pirate Party. And I become one of the more active members. For example, I started our monthly online meetups and so on.
So let me ask you, when you first enter ANS and Nuklearia, how do nuclear advocates feel? How are they thinking about nuclear? And by that, I just mean, is everybody just is it despondent, or is it hopeful, or, sort of what's the view of everybody?
It was quite difficult back in the day, shortly after Fukushima, because we saw the potential of nuclear energy, the necessity to use nuclear energy to stop climate change and to provide energy security. But no one wanted to listen, and the plants were shut down, especially in Germany. I mean, in Austria, we almost had nothing to lose.
Yeah, you may as well, right? You're already not doing it.
But that was the feeling. But we tried to slowly, mostly in online conversation on social media, to talk with people, to connect with people. And we knew that it's a slow process, and it was a slow process, but it's some kind of social chain reaction. The bigger you get, the faster it grows.
Yeah, exactly. So, you say that back in the day, it was way harder. So what's changed over time for you and for nuclear advocacy where you are?
A few things changed. I think one thing is that we just got more thanks to this social chain reactions. Another thing is that it seems that the social media comments slowly had an effect on journalism. And the journalists learned from them. If there are a lot of social media comments over years that are telling them about their mistakes in their articles about nuclear energy, sometimes they read it and they learn from it. I'm pretty sure about that. And another thing that changed is that I think the Fukushima was not that bad. Japan still exists. People slowly forget it. There are other more important things now, and that's also helpful, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's amazing what a setback Fukushima was internationally for nuclear. It's, as somebody who came in after, years after Fukushima, the more I learned about sort of that international wave of anti-nuclearism that rolls in, I was like, this is worse for nuclear than the 70s.
Yeah. Before Fukushima, I didn't saw a reason why I should advocate for nuclear, because it advocates for itself.
Yeah, for real.
It's so good that it will succeed at the end. But yeah, Fukushima was really a major setback.
So then let me ask you this. What's up with the Austrian situation? You guys don't have any plants. Have you had plants in the past and you shuttered them, or
that's an interesting story and sad story.
Often
so
is.
back in the 1950s, we tried, when we became a free country again, we tried to get in with the nuclear energy business, and we started some research reactors. We still have one in Vienna at the Institute of Atomic and Subatomic Physics at the Technical University. And I had some lectures there as a student. It's it's a trigger reactor, so you can operate it as a student. And for example, we put fuel elements out of the reactor and see what effect this had on the reactivity. And we put samples in the reactor and to see how radioactive they become, and did some experiments like that as students. And really nice, interesting
That's
experience.
awesome.
You can see the nice blue glow when the reactor is operating. And so really great facility. And there were two other research reactors, one large material test reactor, 10 megawatt material test reactor, where they did isotope production. And
so is that like medical isotopes or?
Yes, medical isotopes. So, for example, this technetium 99M was produced there, and it was one of the first reactors where they developed this method to produce this technetium without using uranium, because normally you produce it as the mother nuclide, this molybdenum 99, as a fission product. And obviously, you need to do this efficiently. You need highly enriched uranium, and you produce a lot of waste. But they use the molybdenum to produce it. It's a bit less. You get a less pure molybdenum 99 because it's mixed with non-radioactive molybdenum. But it was quite modern.
Cool
Technology. Awesome. And for example, another thing they participated in the early days of the Dragon project, the Euratom Dragon project, and they produced the first in the world, I think, this triso fuel, or this coated particle fuel for high temperature reactors. And it was a nice.
Sounds pretty cutting edge, right?
Yeah, back in the 1960s, it was a pretty good, well-equipped nuclear research center. And back in the day, Austria had quite significant nuclear technology going on. For example, we have a lot of steel industry in Austria, and FÖS, it's called the United Austrian Iron and Steel Plants. It's a large company. They made reactor parts, steam generator parts, reactor pressure vessel parts, containment parts, and so on. Andritz, another large Austrian company, they made refueling machines and main coolant pumps. And
wow, you guys had a lot of the supply chain right there.
And Andritz still makes main coolant pumps, but I think or at least they developed them, the license, the design to China. And a lot of new Chinese reactors still use this Austrian coolant pumps. And the construction companies, Strabag, for example, and Wagner Biro were also involved in nuclear technology. Siemens Austria.
Right. So you've got a lot of you have a lot of the makings for what should be a robust nuclear reactor industry.
Yeah. And back in the early 1970s, we finally wanted to build a nuclear power plant. There were talks about to build a nuclear power plant earlier than that, but back in the late 1960s, early 70s, they finally decided to build a nuclear power plant. There were 3 parties in the parliament back in the day. So the 2 major parties was the Conservative Party and the ÖVP, and the Social Democratic Party, SPÖ. And there was the smaller right-wing party, FPÖ. And at first, there was a conservative government, and they decided to start to build this power plant. And then the government changed to the Social Democratic government. And when the plant was starting to get finished, there were some protests against it, and the Social Democratic government decided to make a referendum about the startup of the power plant. And they were basically absolutely sure that they would win it. But then the Social Democratic chancellor said that he would step down if there is a vote against the nuclear power plant. And the Conservative
Why would
Party,
he? Oh, was so wait.
because he was so popular that he think that it would help the.
Oh, so it was a little bit of hubris.
The referendum. Yes, and then the Conservative Party started to be against the nuclear power plant because they hoped that this chancellor there will be a new chance to get earlier elections, and then there was this referendum, and it was, I think, 49 point something versus 50 something percent, and it was a bit there were a bit more on the anti side.
Wow.
But most or a lot of people who voted against the power plant were basically voted just on this party lines. And
right. So it was really more about like the chancellor made it about himself, and so people were voting about whether or not they wanted him there rather than whether they really cared about nuclear.
Yes. And it was also, you can see in the Austrian states where the Conservative Party is the strongest, most people were against it, and in the states where the Social Democratic Party was the strongest, most people were in favor. And for example, you had a vast majority in Vorarlberg against this nuclear power plant, even though no nuclear power plant was ever planned there. But there was some
typical.
But there was some opposition in Vorarlberg because there was a Swiss nuclear project near the border back in the day, and the people in Vorarlberg protested against the Swiss power plant, and they hoped that if Austria doesn't use nuclear power, they had a better position in this protest.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, because
like that. So,
right, because if Austria has one, then it's sort of like, what are you guys complaining about?
Yes. And then there was a lot of talks, what should we do now? And they talked for several years. The Austrian Nuclear Society was founded back in the day because some people wanted to reverse this referendum. And then they wanted to make a new referendum in 1986. But what happened in 1986? And after this accident, the new referendum was cancelled, and basically it became part of the Austrian political culture that we have been saved from such an accident thanks to our democratic wisdom of this referendum. And all parties turned against the nuclear energy. Yeah, the problem was then, why did we want to use nuclear power in the first place? Because back in the 1970s, we used hydropower and coal. But coal from the Austrian mines was getting more and more expensive, and we knew that we would run out in the 1990s. And these problems still exist in the 1980s, obviously. And there was no good alternative. So they decided to build out hydropower as much as possible and to use imported coal and gas from the Soviet Union. And then there was there were large protests against the hydropower projects, and the Green Party was formed from these protests against hydropower.
So typical.
And so the only thing that was left were imported coal and gas from Russia. And in the 1990s, we really ran out of the coal from our own coal mines. So we had to import all the coal. And later, I think the last was shut down in 2018. We shut down the last coal plants because of climate concerns. And now we only use hydropower and Russian gas.
Oh boy! So how much of your energy consumption is pipelined from Russia? Do you know offhand? It's fine if you don't.
I'm not really sure. It largely depends on the time of the year, because we use a lot of gas for heating, and in the winter there is less hydropower. In the winter is I think about 60-70% of the electricity comes from gas plants or is imported directly.
Wow, that's a ton of gas.
Yeah, and the electricity or the heating, domestic heating also is I know here in Vienna we have about 50% gas. I have a gas heating in my flat as well. I stopped to use it in February because of the invasion, because I didn't want to fuel the war, but yeah, it's not so easy.
Yeah. Okay. So where are you guys now? Because things in Europe are wild energy wise. Is that making it easier for you guys to make the pro-nuclear argument?
In Austria, there's almost no pro-nuclear discussion. So there are some pro-nuclear articles in some more realistic articles in some media outlets, but there is no major there's no party who is actively pushing for nuclear. I forgot one part of the story. Back in the 1990s, there was a group which wanted to who did a petition to the parliament to make an anti-nuclear law as an amendment of the constitution. And they succeeded because no party back in the day wanted to support nuclear energy, because there was no reason to support nuclear energy. Many people were against nuclear energy, and basically no one was in favor of nuclear energy. There were no economic interests for nuclear energy. And so they managed to do it. So we need 2/3 of the votes in the parliament. Take this back.
Wow, that's a huge obstacle.
Yeah, that makes it more difficult. And so basically there's still no politicians who are brave enough to speak out in favor of nuclear energy. Maybe there are some who are secretly pro-nuclear, but only the ones who are against it speak out, because there is still no really. In the last decades, the previous decades, nuclear energy, if you look at the neighboring countries, the development of nuclear energy was slow and expensive, and gas was cheap. So it was easy to not use nuclear energy. For example, in Slovakia, they are now finally powering on I'm really glad that they finally managed to do it. The Mohov 3 nuclear power plant, but they started to build it again in 2008. So I think that's quite a long time, construction time, and it cost much more than it should have. And if you can point at that and say, nuclear is too expensive and too slow, so it's easier to just use gas. But at the moment they don't really know what to do. They wanted to turn the last coal plants back on, but there were a lot of discussions and delays, and I don't really know. There's no really a strategy. That they're extremely short-sighted decision making in the energy policy of Austria. We have a green, the head of the ministry is a campaigner of a green NGO, Leonora Gewessler. So she was head of Global 2000. It's basically an Austrian, maybe even more radical version of Greenpeace.
Wow.
So
you've got stiff opposition there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at the moment.
Okay, well then, so what do you guys like? What's your strategy right now, both ANS and Nuklearia? Like, what do you see as your main goals for getting more support for nuclear where you are?
I think we will only go back to nuclear in Austria if we see that other European countries manage to make nuclear quicker and more economically. That's the only way back. So if it gets more popular in other countries, we will follow. I hope.
Right. So the politicians need to know the water's warm.
Yeah. So that's why I also fight the fight in Germany with Nuklearia, and do what I can to support our friends in other countries. And in Austria, we basically, because the Austrian politicians, they try to fight against nuclear power projects in other countries, for example, Slovakia or the UK, that try to sue the UK for Hinkley Point.
No way.
And we try to argue against that, because yeah, it's just stupid. And
Yeah,
that
that
is
is
basically the only
wild.
thing we can do in Austria at the moment. Yeah, and educate the public, obviously. That's always important.
So yeah, so tell me about that. Like, public comms is so important to the pro-nuclear movement globally because, since the 60s and 70s, nuclear has really been on the back foot and sort of, behind the anti-nuclear Greens. Where are you guys seeing success? Like, what are your strategies for educating the public?
So it's really easy to do it in social media, at least if people are interested. So I mean, it's not really that much organized, but we try to comment newspaper articles and stuff like that in social media. And personally, I don't have a Twitter account, but many people.
That's probably
use
good.
Twitter.
Good for you. Keep it that way.
Yes, I know. I sometimes read Twitter, but I'm not actively using it. But some people use Twitter and have been more or less successful to go in contact with journalists and politicians. That's maybe one of the more important reasons to use Twitter. I have a YouTube channel, but it's I only uploaded a few videos, so that's maybe not the most successful thing yet.
So you guys are, so just to sort of sum up what you said, to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, is that part of your strategy is just, even if it's not totally organized, that's fine. You guys are just trying to convince people one-on-one in social media spaces. You're trying to engage in discourse on the internet with politicians, and you're trying to slowly change the press's assumptions on how they report on this stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a slow fight, but it seems to be effective in the long run.
Yeah.
Now we have, the situation gets better and better. Tragically, because of the war in Ukraine and the extremely high energy prices at the moment, that's also a good argument. I wish it were. Could do without
wish it was another way.
Yeah. But yeah, it's even more important, and it's even more obvious that we need nuclear energy now than ever. Yeah, climate change is also a big argument. I try to join Fridays for Future protests sometimes. And I noticed that the young people there, the students, are often, they don't know much or if anything about nuclear. They're quite interested, but
that's good.
Yeah, the people in Austria, they are not very anti-nuclear. They are somewhat anti-nuclear because they have been told to be anti-nuclear in school, and they never had a reason to question it because there was never a major discussion about it. Some people are slightly pro-nuclear, even in the public, or totally neutral.
Right. So it's not like a firm anti-nuclearism that you're fighting against. Yes, it's really just a lack of awareness.
Yes, but there is almost no pro-nuclear interests in Austria. There are no companies who are pro-nuclear. There are no political parties, politicians who are pro-nuclear. There is no reason to be pro-nuclear. I mean, if you're not really interested in nuclear energy, and because there is no company who wants to build a nuclear power plant in Austria, and has not been since the 1970s. So,
do you think that that'll change after this winter?
No, not yet.
Not enough. More pain is required.
Yes, I think because it's still too slow to be an immediate solution, and I think it will change if I don't know, if Germany wants to build new nuclear power plants and the Poles build one reactor per year on time, on budget, then we will
you'll look into it
or something like that. But I think Austria will not be the first one. It will be one of the last ones in Europe, but it will follow at some point. I hope.
Yeah, in the long run, there will be Austrian reactors.
Yes.
Yeah. But let me ask you this now. This is really fascinating background. I mean, just so many so many common stories in what happens to nuclear across the West in the last half century. But enough of the past, enough of the present situation. What are you looking forward to in nuclear? Like, what gives you hope for nuclear and for nuclear in Austria, if anything?
I mean, I know that it has an enormous potential, that it's necessary, and that it will be successful in the future.
Mhm.
Austria will not be the first place where it's successful, but it will be successful in other places, and I'm sure it will be successful in Europe in the coming 10 to 20 years. In other European countries, I mean, there are a lot of countries who want to push to go to new nuclear.
Yeah.
Poland, the Baltic states, Finland,
Mhm.
Romania, a lot of countries, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Slovenia, France, of course. I mean, the French nuclear fleet and the French nuclear politics have their own problems, but
Yeah.
they're going back to it, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Netherlands is also approaching more pro-nuclear politics. Sweden now with the recent election.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think there are a lot of countries who
And
don't want to end up in Germany's position
yeah,
as well.
and we will have a successful project in one of these countries, and all of the others will follow, and then at some point we will follow, I'm sure.
Yeah, so it's sort of like you're drinking like ice water out of a glass and you're trying to get the last little bit, and the ice cubes are like, hold, and then all of a sudden they fall on your face all at once. That's how it'll be for nuclear in Europe.
Yes. Even on this level, it's a chain reaction. And I'm sure it goes exponential, like a nuclear chain reaction.
I love that. No, that's great.
Well,
that's
the more
awesome.
successful nuclear energy becomes, the quicker it becomes even more successful, I'm sure.
Yeah. Hey, nothing breeds success like success.
Yes.
For
a long time, the reactor has been subcritical, maybe, or low criticality state. but now we're pulling the control rod slowly.
Slowly we're getting there. So how do people find you? How do they find your stuff? How do they get involved? If we have any listeners in Europe that want to pitch in.
I mean, we are on various social media platforms. Nuklearia has a Discord channel.
Great.
Where we are quite active, and we make this monthly meet. For example, on the 13th of every month, and on the last Thursday. So we have even 2 monthly or bi-monthly meetups now. And the Austrian Nuclear Society has a crappy homepage, which is more or less broken at the moment. And we have a Facebook page, a WhatsApp group, Signal group, and more or less monthly meetup in real life in Vienna.
Okay, cool. So I'll put the link you can send me the links to some of that, and I'll put them in the show notes so that people can join you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up here?
I wish we see a bright future for nuclear in the not too distant future.
Yeah. Me too. Well, this was awesome, man. I hope we get a chance to talk again soon. I hope I can make it out to your neck of the woods sometime soon as well, so that we can meet in person. And everybody else out there, stay sharp, stay strong, and stay radiant. And we will see you next time.